Do you want to learn how to become a real estate photographer? Check out my course, How to Become a Real Estate Photographer, at rickmcavoyphotography.com. Your photos are technically perfect, sharp, well exposed, but they look weirdly orange or horribly blue. In this episode, I'm going to tell you why and what you can do about it. See, you've done everything right. The exposure's spot on. The focus is good. You're happy with the composition. But when you look at the photo, you think, why does everyone's skin look like they've been tangoed? Or, why does this nice warm living room look like a hospital corridor? Or, why do your sunset photos look grey and lifeless? Or, why does that beautiful white building look vaguely green under the fluorescent street lights? Yes, problem, eh? Well, welcome to the world of white balance, dear listener. It's one of those things that nobody really explains to beginners, and that's a shame because once you understand it, and it really doesn't take long, you'll stop wondering why your photos look a bit off and know exactly what to do about it. And this is why this matters so much. White balance is the foundation of accurate colour in your photos. Get it wrong, and every other adjustment you make in editing to the colour part of things is working from a wonky starting point. But get it right, and suddenly your photos look like what you actually saw when you pressed the shutter button. And that's what we want, isn't it, dear listener? Yes, it is, Rick. This is one of the most fundamental settings on your camera, right up there with exposure and focus. And unlike these two, which tend to get talked about endlessly, white balance often gets ignored. I seem to remember white balance being one of the last things that I learned in the fundamentals of digital photography. But we're going to fix that today, aren't we? By the end of this episode, you'll understand exactly what white balance is, why it matters, and how to use it properly. Hi, and welcome to episode 227, blimey, of the Photography Explained podcast. Yes, it's still a surprise. This episode is titled White Balance Explained, Why Your Photos Look Too Orange or Too Blue. A very good morning, good afternoon, or indeed good evening to you, wherever you are in the world and whatever time of day you find yourself listening to me. I'm your host, Rick. Hi. And in each episode, I try to explain one photographic thing to you in plain English in less than 27 minutes-ish. Without the irrelevant details, yes, really. I'm a professionally qualified photographer based in England with a lifetime of photographic experience, which I share with you, dear listener, in my splendid podcast. Right, let's get straight into this. In the last episode, episode 226, we talked about why photos can be too dark, and that was all about exposure. That was about getting the right amount of light into your camera. Today, we're going on to the next logical step because even with perfect exposure, colours can still go completely wrong. And the reason is almost always white balance. So here's what we're going to cover. I've got 7 tips for you today, 7 things that will help you understand white balance, use it properly, and rescue photos when it goes wrong. But don't worry, please don't worry. If it's all gone wrong in the taking the photo bit, it can be fixed in the editing bit. Yes, of course we want to get things right in camera, don't we? We always want to get things right first time, but being brutally honest with you, this is one of those things that I do leave to fix later on. More on why in a bit. Okay, tip 1. What white balance is and why it matters. Okay, let's start at the very beginning. What is white balance? See, here's the thing. Different light sources produce different colours of light. Sunlight at midday is quite blue and neutral. It's not at sunrise or sunset, is it? The warm glow of a lamp in your living room, that can be very orange. A cloudy sky pushes things towards cold bluish tones. Fluorescent office lighting, a word I struggle with, fluorescent, goes a bit green. Now, your eyes and your brain, they automatically adjust for all of this. You can walk from outside on a sunny day into a room lit by lamps and everything still looks normal to you. White things still look white, and that's the key, white looking white. But your camera, it doesn't do this automatically unless you tell it to. It records what's actually there, the raw colour temperature of the light. And if the camera gets it wrong, or you set it incorrectly, the photo comes out with a colour cast. Too warm, too cool, too green. White balance is the setting that tells your camera what kind of light you're in, so it can correct for that and produce photos where white things actually look white, and skin tones look like skin tones, and the world looks, well, like the world we're used to seeing, which is what we want. That's it really, that's white balance, which is simple enough when you put it like that, isn't it? Yes, it is. So let's get into how you use it. Tip 2. Why your indoor photos look too orange. This is one of the most common complaints I hear from beginners. Why do my photos look so orange? The answer is almost always tungsten light. And yes, tungsten light is the correct term, even if it sounds a bit old-fashioned. Tungsten is the name for traditional incandescent light bulbs, the ones with the glowing filament thing inside. They produce warm, orange-toned light, and even modern warm LED bulbs produce the same effect, maybe to a lesser degree, but it's the same wrong colour. So if your camera's set to auto white balance, it should correct for this, but auto white balance isn't perfect. Sometimes it overcorrects, sometimes it undercorrects, and sometimes it just gets confused. So what's the fix? Well, if you're taking a photo under tungsten light, set your white balance to the tungsten preset, or incandescent if that's what it's called. Whatever it's called, it normally looks like a little light bulb icon. And if you're shooting in RAW, you can correct it in editing afterwards. I'll come back to that, bit of a tease that for the thing that I do. So there's one thing worth knowing. Sometimes that warm orange glow is actually lovely and atmospheric. A cosy evening scene lit by candles or lamps, you might actually want to keep that warmth in your photo. White balance isn't always about making things look neutral. It's also about making things look the way you want them to look in your photo. So you don't have to have white balance technically perfect all the time. There are times when you need to have the white balance correct if you're doing commercial or product photography. But if it's personal work and you just like a look, that's fine. So just bear in mind what you're doing with the photos. Okay, tip 3. Why outdoor photos sometimes look too blue or too cold. Well, the flip side of the orange problem is the blue problem. You're shooting outside on an overcast day and everything looks cold and a bit miserable. Or you're in the shade and the photo has a distinct chilly blue cast to it. This happens because open shade and overcast conditions produce light that's towards the blue end of the colour temperature scale. Your camera may not correct for it automatically, and the result is photos that look flat and cold, and we don't want that, do we? The solution here is the cloudy or shade white balance presets. The cloudy setting warms things up a little bit. The shade settings warms them up even more because shade is cooler than open cloud. Interestingly, landscape photographers sometimes deliberately use the cloudy setting even on sunny days because it adds a touch of golden warmth to the image. It's a little trick that can make photos feel more inviting. How utterly splendid when you discover things like that. So there is another part to this. You need to understand white balance before you can use it creatively to get effects and looks and feels that you want. Right, tip 4, how to use auto white balance and when to trust it. Well, auto white balance, usually labelled AWB on your camera. Well, what would you expect it to be labelled? It's the default setting on most cameras, and to be perfectly honest with you, dear listener, it's pretty good these days. For most situations, in decent light, outdoors, it'll do a perfectly acceptable job and you won't even need to think about it. And this is when auto white balance works well. Outdoor photography and natural light and daytime shooting, that kind of thing. But here's when it struggles. Indoor photography under artificial lights, situations where the camera gets confused by large areas of strong colour, and mixed lighting where you've got both artificial and natural light in the same shot, like a room with lights on near a window, or somewhere where you've got different types of artificial lighting illuminating the same composition, if you've got different types of lighting in a room. So what to do, eh? Well, start with auto white balance, see how it goes. When you notice your photos consistently looking too warm or too cool in a particular situation, that's when you switch to a preset or you set it manually. Don't overthink it. Tip 5. How to use white balance presets on your camera. Most cameras, from a basic entry-level DSLR to the latest professional mirrorless camera, have white balance presets. These are pre-programmed settings designed for common lighting situations. These are what you turn to when auto white balance isn't quite cutting it. So here's a quick rundown of the main ones. Daylight or sunny for bright sunlight. This gives you natural, neutral results in direct sun. Cloudy for overcast conditions, adds warmth to counteract the cool light. Shade for subjects in open shades, adds even more warmth. Tungsten or incandescent for indoor artificial lights, the classic orange bulb situation. Fluorescent for offices or spaces with strip lighting, and this corrects the greenish cast that you get. And flash, which matches the colour temperature of your built-in or external flash. So how do you find these? Well, on most cameras, it's in the menu, or there may be a dedicated button on the body. Not sure where it is? Well, you should have checked out your quick start guide, shouldn't you? Which I recommended you do in episode 225, titled, I just got my first camera, what do I do in the first week? So you should know where it is. So these presets, they're great, they're dead handy, and they really do the job well. Okay, tip 6, how to fix white balance in editing when you shoot in RAW. Here's a really important one. If you shoot in RAW format, and if you don't know what that is, don't worry, I will do a whole episode on that at some point. You can correct white balance perfectly in post-processing after the fact. White balance is essentially metadata in a RAW file. It's not baked into the image, so you can change it completely without any quality loss. And this is one of the advantages of shooting in RAW. You don't need to get white balance perfect in camera because you can fix it afterwards. With RAW files and the right editing software, you can apply the same presets you find in camera to the image after you've taken it. Yes, really. The daylight preset, the cloudy preset, the shade preset, the tungsten preset, and all the others. You'll find them ready to apply with a single click. And there is more. In Lightroom, for example, there's a temperature slider. Drag it left for cooler, right for warmer. And there's also a tint slider for correcting green or magenta casts. And you can also use the white balance selector tool, which is it's a little eyedropper thing. You just click on something in your image that's neutral, grey or white, and Lightroom works out the correct white balance from that. But if you shoot in JPEG, the white balance is baked into the file when you take the photo, and it's harder to correct without losing quality, and you don't have access to the presets, at least I don't think you do. This is another good reason to shoot in RAW when you can, but even with JPEGs, a rough fix in editing is absolutely possible. Tip 7. The grey card trick, your secret weapon for perfect white balance. This is a professional trick that costs you about £10-20, and it makes white balance correction ridiculously easy in camera. Get yourself a grey card. Now, a grey card is exactly what it sounds like. It's a card that's a perfect neutral grey. It's 18% grey. It's not white, it's not black, it's neutral middle grey, 18%. You can buy them from any photography shop or online, and they're small, lightweight, and they can last you a long time. Now, one thing, they're probably not carved these days. When I started in photography, a grey card was a piece of card that was grey, but now you get much more sophisticated, collapsible grey card type things. And this is how you use it. Before you start taking your actual photos in a particular location or lighting setup, take a quick test shot with the grey card in the frame. Just hold it up, put it on the floor, whatever. Just make sure it's lit by the same light that's hitting your main subject, and take the photo. Then put the card away and carry on taking your photos. Later on, when you're editing in Lightroom or whatever software you use, open that test shot with the grey card, grab the white balance selector tool, the eyedropper tool I mentioned earlier, and click on the grey card. Boom, perfect white balance most of the time. And then you can copy that white balance setting and paste it onto all the other photos you took in the same lighting. Job done. Now, every time the lighting changes, you need to repeat this exercise, but that shouldn't be a problem. It's never been a problem for me. Now, I know this sounds almost too simple, but this works brilliantly. Professional photographers use this technique all the time. Even in tricky mixed lighting situations, this can work. If you're doing colour critical work, you might want to get something a bit more sophisticated than a grey card. But for the architectural and real estate photography that I do, the grey card works, I'd say 99 times out of 100. So they're brilliant things. Get one. They're not expensive. The grey card gives your editing software a reference point. This is what neutral grey looks like in this light. And from that, it can work out the correct white balance for everything else in the scene. I use one on every commercial shoot, and 99 times out of 100, it gets the white balance bang on. Okay, quick recap. Let's bring that together quickly. Tip 1, what white balance is and why it matters. Basically, white balance is how the camera records the colours and how it shows white. If white looks white, your white balance is probably okay. If it's orange or blue or any other colour, it's not, and you need to do something about it. Tip 2, indoor photos going orange. Tungsten light, use the tungsten preset or correct in editing. Tip 3, outdoor photos looking cold and blue. Switch to cloudy or shade preset. Tip 4, auto white balance is great for most situations. Start there and adjust when needed. Tip 5, white balance presets are your quick fix for predictable lighting situations. Tip 6, if you shoot in RAW, you can fix white balance perfectly in post-processing. Total freedom, one less thing to worry about. And tip 7, use a grey card for perfect white balance every time. One test shot, click the card in editing, done. Right, what if I use a phone to take my photos? Good news, dear listener. Everything in this episode applies to you too, dear phone photographers. Now, your phone handles white balance automatically, and modern phones are genuinely excellent at it. Most of the time, you won't need to think about it at all. But if your photos are looking too warm or too cool, too blue or too orange that is, and you want to fix it, most camera apps let you manually adjust white balance. The Pro or manual mode in most camera apps gives you white balance control. Even better, if you shoot in RAW on your phone, which you can do in lots of third-party apps, you can get the same post-processing freedom I described in tip 6. And you can correct white balance perfectly in Lightroom Mobile as well, which is still free, I think. Talking of Lightroom Mobile, you can take photos using the Lightroom Mobile app, and you can set the white balance before you take a photo. How utterly splendid. What do I do? Here's actually what I do in my professional work. For my architectural and real estate photography, I shoot in RAW and I leave white balance on auto. Why is that, Rick? Because I'm going to correct it in Lightroom anyway, and I'd rather focus on composition and exposure and getting the shots when I'm on location. I can sort out the colours later. I know that, so why make life hard for myself? And tip 7, that simple grey card. I use that, click on it when I'm back processing. 99 times out of 100, white balance absolutely nailed. Interiors can be tricky. You'll have a mix of daylight coming through the windows and warm artificial lights inside. I photograph interior spaces with the lights on, so what I tend to do is set the white balance for the lighting in the room and see how that looks. That's what I want to do. I want to show what the lighting's doing in the space. Because I photograph buildings which have got quite funky and specialised bespoke lighting installations, and I don't want to get them wrong, do I? Sometimes it doesn't look right and I've got to go towards the natural light a bit more, but there's a bit of a judgment call there. But put the grey card where the majority of the light is and you're fine most of the time. And for landscape photography, every now and then I use the cloudy preset, even in decent light, because that slightly warms things and gives them a golden lovely look. This is a creative choice, by the way, not a technical correction. Okay, here's something for you to do, dear listener. Here's your challenge. Find a room and turn the lights on in your home. Take 3 photos of the same scene, one with auto white balance, one with the tungsten or incandescent preset, and one with a daylight preset, and then compare them. You'll immediately see the difference white balance makes. The tungsten preset should give you the most neutral result. The daylight preset will look horribly orange. Auto should be somewhere in between. Now, this is a quick exercise. It takes 5 minutes, but it'll help make white balance make sense. It really will. It'll make white balance click in your brain in a way that no amount of explanation can. And if you do that, let me know how you get on. I'd love to hear about it. Oh yes, and once you've done that, try all the other white balance presets and just see what's going on. Playing around is the best way of learning about white balance. Right, related episodes worth listening to. Yes, that's what I've written. Related episodes worth listening to, which suggests that there are related episodes which aren't worth listening to. I think I need to change that, don't I? If this episode has sparked your curiosity about getting the technical side of your photos right, there are a few episodes in the back catalogue that are well worth your time. The obvious one to pair with this episode is episode 226, Why Are My Photos Too Dark? Understanding Exposure for Beginners. Of course, white balance and exposure, they go hand in hand, don't they? Once you get those two fundamentals sorted, your photos will look dramatically better. And that's it. Move on, Rick. Next episode. In the next episode, episode 228, we're tackling a question that a lot of you are probably quietly asking yourselves. How do I know if I'm ready to move from my phone to a proper camera? Because it's not just about money, it's about whether you actually need one, whether you're ready to make the most of it, what you want to get out of your photography. Only you can decide this, but I can give you things to think about that will hopefully help you make that decision one way or the other. Nothing wrong with taking photos with a phone, but there are advantages to taking photos with a camera, and I'm going to tell you what they are. How marvellous. Yep, hopefully you'll find that one useful. So check out the podcast in a fortnight when episode 228 will land. Marvellous. Okay, get in touch and subscribe. If you've enjoyed this episode, and I sincerely hope you have, subscribe so you don't miss future ones. And for everything else, visit my sparkling website, rickmcavoyphotography.com. When you get there, you can ask me questions, you can find out how to get my weekly email, get in touch with me. Oh, and before I forget, you can text me directly from the podcast feed. And you can find me on YouTube. Just put Rick McAvoy into the search and up I will pop. Finally, check out my courses page, rickmcavoyphotography.com/courses, where there is new stuff. Yep, excited about that. There's new stuff I'm working on at the time of recording this. So have a look and, hopefully there's something of interest to you. And also check out my resources page, rickmcavoyphotography.com/resources, which is a page which takes you in all sorts of splendid directions. This episode was brought to you by a cheese and pickle sandwich, which I consumed before settling into my homemade, acoustically cushioned recording emporium. I've been Rick McAvoy. Thanks again very much for listening to me and for giving me 27-ish minutes of your valuable time. Now, I reckon this episode's going to be about, 22 minutes, 23 minutes after I've edited out the mistakes and the other bad stuff. Thanks for listening. Take care. Stay safe. Cheers from me, Rick. How to become a real estate photographer. rickmcavoyphotography.com/courses.